Okay, now let's come to the mastering part. First of all, let's take a look at the input signal. So again, we don't want anything to clip. Of course, it's always best to check that out at the very beginning of your mixing stage when you set all the volumes, that you make sure nothing is clipping. But if it still does clip at some points and you already adjusted all the volumes and don't want to adjust all volumes again and again, you can just turn down the input volume here in Isotope Ozone if you actually use this plugin. If not, you can always put a sort of limiter in there and just turn down the input volume of that to make sure that nothing is clipping. Then let's take a first look again at our frequency spectrum. And let's make a little snapshot. As you saw, I use a very long adjustment time for the spectrum. If you go to options and then to spectrum, and here the average time is set to infinite, because this gives me a nice general overlook of the frequency response of my whole mix. And with this, it's easier to work, I find. Now as we look at this, remember we want to achieve the pink noise slope as good as we can, and this is already going to the right direction if we turn the guide on and here again. Now, why the pink noise? Well, the pink noise provides a lot of bass and a nice crisp and clear brightness, which is more preferred for heavy metal. The brown noise slope, if I turn this guide on in here, you see it's a bit steeper, has more bass and less brightness, and this is more preferred for pop music. But we don't want to make a pop mix in here. We are working with heavy metal, distorted guitars. We want everything to be bright and in your face. So the pink noise guide is the best way to go for this. As you can see here from my frequency spectrum, there's still this little bit of dent in the mid section and this little bump in the higher section. And you can see already here with the EQ how I even this out. Now, although this may look as if there's a lot of going on, this is zoomed in. If I zoom out, you see it's very faint, my changes to it. So this mid boost in here is just 1.8 dB going up. The reduction in here is just minus 1.6. And up here I like to boost to give it more brightness. And this is it for the EQ. So you don't want to use the EQ in your mastering stage excessively. You just use it to even out some minor things in your mix as a whole. But don't boost things to, I don't know, 5 dB and the other one to minus 10 dB. That will totally mess it up. You're not changing the tone in mastering, you're only giving the pie its whipped cream topping. So, and then we can already turn this on and listen to the results. Wait, before and after is better. Now, although you may not see a lot of change in the frequency going on, the green one is the momentary thing going on from the mix, and the white one again is just a snapshot from earlier. But you already hear a difference. The guitars are sort of sticking out a bit better and gives it all more fullness. As still, as you can see, it's not too much going on. Now, the next thing, very important tool. Wait, if we go to the graph, this shows us the signal chain. So in here at the beginning I have the EQ. The next thing I like to put is the Harmonic Exciter. And this is here. Now, if you have watched my first mastering tutorial, you notice I said that I don't like to use the Harmonic Exciter in here because it was creating too much of annoying distortion. That was because in the stupidity of my youthful naivete, I overlooked this little button over here that changes the mode of the Harmonic Exciter. And by default it's set to retro, which gives a whole lot more distortion in it. So I changed it to tape, and I like the tape one most. So let me first explain a little bit how a harmonic exciter works, or at least how I understand it. Now imagine the bass guitar and your electric guitar wouldn't meet in the bass section too smoothly, so there is a sort of gap. Now what a harmonic exciter does is it adds some artificial overnotes which helps to fill those gaps, and plus it adds a nice saturation, and you can change the mode of this kind of saturation with the button up here. And I like the tape one most because it has a lot of warmth to it and not too much distortion, but still also a lot of crispiness to it. The cheap one again has more distortion in it, and the warm one is, as it says, very warm. It doesn't have a whole lot of crispiness going on, so the tape is the one I prefer. As you can see here, I boosted this for every band equally and also not too much. Now if I go to before and after, you'll notice this already adds a whole lot to the volume. You see here, it already starts to clip again, but we are still going to this later. Now the next thing that's going on in my signal chain, go to graph, is the stereo imaging. This is over here. So you can see the stereo widening or imaging, however you want to call it. There's again not too much going on in my setup. Again, every band is boosted equally. I do not boost it a whole lot because if you recall in the mixing stage, I add to the guitars already a lot of stereo wideness, as you see here. So I don't need to do a lot in the mastering stage, because this also serves the purpose to let the drum kit still sit nicely compact at its place. And also, if you would boost everything too much, then also your snare and your overheads would be just everywhere. And you do not really want to have that as well. You want everything to be nice and clear in its place in the stereo image, so everything is also nice locatable.